the suffering that a narcissist feels when living with an empath. For those of you who possess a profound and innate capacity for empathy, a deep wellspring of understanding and compassion, the world is often experienced through the lens of connection and shared emotion. You feel deeply, you strive to understand, and you inherently seek harmony. When such a soul finds themselves entangled in a relationship with a narcissist, a person characterized by a profound lack of empathy, an inflated sense of self-importance, and an insatiable need for external validation, a complex and often devastating dynamic unfolds. You, the empath, relentlessly try to give, to heal, to understand, hoping your boundless compassion can somehow fill the void within them. But what if, beneath a narcissist's outward projection of superiority and control, living with an empath actually triggers a profound and agonizing form of internal suffering for the narcissist themselves? What if the very qualities that define an empath, their genuine emotional depth, their desire for authentic connection, their eventual need for boundaries, inadvertently serve as constant, painful reminders of what the narcissist lacks, exposing the very foundations of their disordered personality? It's a paradox, isn't it? The empath suffers immensely from the narcissist's abuse, yet the narcissist, in their own twisted way, experiences a unique kind of internal torment simply by being in close proximity to someone who embodies the very qualities they lack or despise. This isn't about wishing them ill, it's about understanding the complex psychological interplay that reveals the narcissist's inherent fragility. This suffering for the narcissist is not something the empath inflicts with malicious intent. Rather, it's the inevitable, agonizing consequence of the narcissist's own pathology colliding with the reality of genuine human connection and the empath's eventual need for self-preservation. In this crucial and deeply insightful discussion, we are going to courageously delve into 10 specific ways a narcissist experiences profound internal suffering when living with an empath. These are the psychological realities, rooted firmly in clinical observation, that highlight the narcissist's inherent deficiencies and reveal the agonizing challenges they face when confronted with genuine human qualities they cannot replicate or control. Understanding these dynamics offers you, the empath, invaluable clarity, validating your experiences and empowering you to see the true nature of their disorder, thereby guiding you toward your own essential path of healing and liberation. When we discuss the suffering a narcissist feels when living with an empath, it is absolutely essential to approach this topic with precision and from a purely psychological perspective. This suffering is not a direct intentional infliction of harm by the empath. Instead, it is the profound internal psychological distress, the agonizing narcissistic injury, and the intense dysregulation that the narcissist experiences as their own inherent pathology collides with the empath's genuine qualities and eventual self-protective actions. The empath, by their very nature, becomes a mirror reflecting the narcissist's deepest fears and deficiencies, inadvertently intensifying their internal torment. The narcissist's suffering stems from their inability to truly connect, their profound shame, their need for absolute control, and their desperate reliance on external validation. An empath, with their genuine emotional responses and eventual need for authentic connection, inadvertently exposes these vulnerabilities, leading to the narcissist's internal chaos. Here are 10 ways a narcissist experiences profound psychological suffering when living with an empath. The constant threat of their emptiness being exposed. Perhaps the most fundamental and terrifying form of suffering a narcissist experiences when living with an empath is the constant, gnawing threat that their profound internal emptiness and void will be exposed. While the narcissist meticulously constructs an elaborate false self, the empath's inherent emotional depth and intuitive understanding pose a continuous, albeit often unacknowledged threat to this fragile facade. Psychologically, the narcissist lacks an authentic, stable sense of self. They are like a hollow shell, relying entirely on external validation to feel real. The empath, with their rich inner world, genuine emotions, and capacity for introspection, inadvertently highlights this profound deficiency, When the empath expresses genuine emotion, shares a deep thought, or simply possesses a vibrant inner life, it serves as a painful contrast to the narcissist's barren internal landscape. The narcissist cannot truly participate in genuine emotional exchange, nor can they sustain authentic introspection. This creates a constant, unacknowledged fear that the empath will eventually see through their performance and discover the empty void beneath. This existential terror of exposure, amplified by the empath's proximity, is a deeply unsettling and chronic form of internal suffering for the narcissist, forcing them to relentlessly work to maintain their illusion. 2. The unbearable weight of their own unacknowledged shame. A profoundly agonizing and inescapable form of suffering for a narcissist living with an empath is the unbearable, unacknowledged weight of their own deep-seated shame and inadequacy. While the narcissist desperately projects this shame onto others, the empath's inherent empathy and compassion create a unique psychological pressure. Psychologically, the narcissist's grandiosity is a brittle defense against an overwhelming core of shame, often rooted in early trauma. They cannot tolerate this feeling, and thus project it relentlessly onto their victims. However, an empath's very nature is to absorb, to understand, and to forgive. This creates a paradox. The narcissist wants to offload their shame, but the empath's compassion, while initially a source of supply, cannot ultimately absorb or fix the narcissist's internal, pathological shame. The empath's genuine concern for others, their willingness to forgive others' flaws, but not the narcissist's own projected flaws, inadvertently holds up a mirror to the narcissist's inability to forgive themselves or others. This leads to an internal psychological pressure cooker. The narcissist knows, deep down, that the empath sees something in them that others might not, and this awareness, even if twisted into paranoia, exacerbates their fear of being truly known and judged as unworthy. This continuous battle against their own internal unacknowledged shame, intensified by the empath's presence, is a relentless form of psychological torment. 3. The frustration of not being able to fully control the empath's core. For a narcissist, a significant source of suffering when living with an empath is the pervasive frustration of never being able to fully control the empath's core essence, their authentic spirit, or their fundamental values. While the narcissist may succeed in manipulating the empath's behaviors for a time, the empath's intrinsic nature, their genuine moral compass, and their deep desire for connection remain beyond the narcissist's absolute dominion. Psychologically, the narcissist has a pathological need for absolute control over their environment and the people within it. They view others as objects to be manipulated and molded to serve their needs. The empath, however, possesses an inherent sense of self, a strong intuition, and fundamental values rooted in compassion and fairness. While the empath may initially yield to manipulation out of love or a desire for peace, their core self resists complete subjugation. This becomes an endless source of frustration for the narcissist. They can bend the empath, but they cannot truly break their spirit or fundamentally alter their inherent empathy. This leads to a constant, nagging awareness that there is a part of the empath that remains unyielding, a part they cannot truly possess or fully dominate. This perpetual struggle for absolute control over the empath's spirit is a source of intense psychological distress, as it constantly reminds the narcissist of their own limitations and their ultimate inability to conquer another's authentic being. 4. The mirror of authentic emotion they cannot feel. A particularly painful form of suffering for a narcissist living with an empath is when they are continually confronted with the mirror of authentic emotion that they themselves cannot genuinely feel or express. The empath's capacity for deep love, profound sadness, genuine joy, or heartfelt remorse serves as a constant, stark reminder of the emotional barrenness within the narcissist. Psychologically, narcissists are emotionally stunted. While they can mimic emotions for manipulative purposes, they lack the capacity for true empathy, unconditional love, or genuine remorse. The empath, in contrast, expresses these emotions authentically and powerfully. This creates an implicit, unavoidable contrast. When the empath expresses genuine grief, the narcissist observes a depth they cannot fathom. When the empath experiences true joy from a simple connection, the narcissist feels a pang of something they can only simulate. This constant exposure to genuine human emotion forces the narcissist, on a subconscious level, to confront what they lack. This is suffering, because it highlights their own emotional emptiness, their inability to connect on a truly human level, and their fundamental difference from others. It can trigger envy, frustration, and a desperate need to diminish or devalue the empath's emotions to avoid this painful mirror, but the internal recognition of their own emotional deficiency remains an agonizing, inescapable reality. 5. The inability to fully gaslight or break the empath's core perception of reality. One of the most infuriating and deeply suffering experiences for a narcissist living with an empath is their ultimate inability to fully gaslight or completely shatter the empath's core perception of reality and their strong intuitive sense of truth. While the narcissist employs gaslighting as a primary weapon to confuse, control, and undermine their victim's sanity, the empath's inherent intuition and deeply rooted connection to truth often resist complete distortion. Psychologically, gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse designed to make the victim doubt their own memory, perception, and sanity, thereby gaining absolute control over their reality. A narcissist relies on this tactic to maintain their false narrative and deflect blame. However, an empath often possesses a strong intuitive sense, a gut feeling, and a deep internal knowing of right and wrong that resists being fully overridden, even when bombarded with contradictory information. While the empath may experience immense confusion, self-doubt, and cognitive dissonance, their core intuition often remains intact, signaling that something is very wrong. This becomes a source of profound frustration and suffering for the narcissist, because they cannot achieve absolute control over the empath's mind. They see the empath struggling but not completely breaking, not fully internalizing the narcissist's distorted reality. This constant futile battle to completely erase the empath's grip on truth is deeply aggravating and unsettling for the narcissist, as it signifies a profound limitation to their manipulative power, leaving them agitated and perpetually unsatisfied with their incomplete dominion. 6. The unfulfilled craving for perfect, unconditional supply. A significant source of suffering for a narcissist living with an empath is the unfulfilled, insatiable craving for perfect, unconditional supply that the empath, despite their best efforts, can never fully provide. The narcissist's need for validation is boundless, a bottomless pit that no amount of admiration or attention can ever truly fill. Psychologically, the narcissist operates from an insatiable hunger for supply, constantly needing external validation to regulate their fragile ego. The empath, with their inherent desire to give and please, initially provides an abundance of this supply: attention, care, admiration, emotional reactions. However, even the most empathetic person has limits. They cannot be a perfect constant reflection of the narcissist's grandiosity, nor can they endlessly tolerate abuse without eventually reaching their breaking point and setting boundaries. When the empath inevitably sets a boundary, or simply becomes exhausted and cannot provide the perfect, unwavering supply the narcissist demands, it triggers intense, narcissistic injury. This is suffering for the narcissist because their fundamental pathological craving remains unfulfilled. They are perpetually chasing something that can never truly satisfy them, leading to chronic dissatisfaction, resentment, and a relentless search for the next fix. The empath, by simply being human and having limits, becomes a constant reminder of the narcissist's unquenchable thirst and their inherent inability to ever be truly satisfied. 7. The existential loneliness in the face of true connection. Perhaps one of the most poignant and truly suffering aspects for a narcissist living with an empath is the profound existential loneliness they experience in the face of the empath's desire for genuine connection, a connection the narcissist is pathologically incapable of providing. The empath yearns for authentic intimacy, emotional vulnerability, and mutual understanding, which are the cornerstones of true human bonds. Psychologically, narcissists are fundamentally incapable of genuine connection due to their lack of empathy, their inability to be vulnerable, and their view of others as mere objects. They can mimic intimacy, but they cannot truly feel it. The empath, conversely, actively seeks and radiates genuine connection. This creates a painful dissonance for the narcissist. They see the empath's capacity for deep love, loyal friendship, and authentic belonging with others, and this starkly highlights their own profound isolation. They are perpetually alone, even when surrounded by people, because they cannot form bonds that truly nourish them. This suffering is the unacknowledged realization that they are fundamentally disconnected, alienated from true human experience. The empath's yearning for real intimacy serves as a constant, agonizing reminder of the narcissist's own emotional barrenness and their self-imposed relational prison, a deep, pervasive loneliness they can never escape. 8. The rage when their entitlement is not met by boundless empathy. For a narcissist, a frequent and intense source of suffering, when living with an empath, is the seething rage they feel when their pathological sense of entitlement is not met by the empath's truly boundless, unconditional empathy. While the empath initially provides immense understanding and forgiveness, their patience eventually runs out, which the narcissist perceives as a profound injustice. Psychologically, the narcissist believes they are inherently superior and entitled to special treatment, constant adoration, and unquestioning obedience. They view the empath's empathy as an endless resource meant to be exclusively directed at them, to absorb their abuse, excuse their behavior, and constantly soothe their fragile ego. When the empath, having reached their limits, sets a boundary, expresses a need, or simply stops tolerating abuse, the narcissist perceives this as a profound betrayal and an unforgivable slight. This triggers intense narcissistic rage, a terrifying outburst stemming from their unfulfilled entitlement and their inability to regulate their emotion. This suffering is the narcissist's internal fury at the world for not conforming to their grandiose demands, an overwhelming anger at the empath for daring to have limits. This constant frustrated rage, born from their own pathological entitlement, is an exhausting and destructive internal state that ultimately isolates them further as the empath eventually withdraws to protect themselves from its relentless torrent. 9. The envy of the empath's innate capacity for joy and connection. A subtle yet deeply painful form of suffering for a narcissist living with an empath is the pervasive, gnawing envy of the empath's innate capacity for genuine joy, authentic connection, and a rich inner life. The narcissist often observes the empath's ability to find happiness in simple things, to form deep bonds with others, and to possess a robust moral compass, qualities the narcissist himself lacks. Psychologically, narcissists are consumed by envy, a feeling they project onto others. They cannot tolerate the idea that someone else possesses qualities they lack or experiences a fulfillment they cannot access. The empath's authentic warmth, their ability to truly connect with others, their inner peace, and their capacity for genuine happiness serve as a constant infuriating reminder of the narcissist's own internal emptiness and emotional sterility. This triggers intense resentment and a profound sense of inferiority, even as they attempt to devalue or sabotage the empath. This suffering is the narcissist's chronic frustration with their inability to feel true joy or forge genuine bonds, always observing it in others, especially the empath, and resenting them for it. This pervasive envy poisons their own existence, preventing them from experiencing true contentment and trapping them in a cycle of resentment and comparison. 10. The threat of the empath's eventual disengagement and no contact. Perhaps the ultimate and most terrifying form of suffering for a narcissist living with an empath is the constant underlying threat and eventual reality of the empath's profound disengagement and the ultimate implementation of no contact. For the narcissist, the empath represents a highly valuable, seemingly inexhaustible source of supply and control. The thought of losing this source is existentially terrifying. Psychologically, the narcissist has an intense fear of abandonment, stemming from their core wound and profound insecurity. They are pathologically dependent on external validation. The empath, by enduring the abuse and constantly trying to fix the relationship, inadvertently provides a sense of security to the narcissist that they won't be abandoned. However, as the empath's patience inevitably runs out and they begin to set boundaries, withdraw emotionally, or contemplate leaving, the narcissist becomes increasingly panicked. This suffering is the gnawing fear of being discarded, of losing control over a primary object, and facing the terrifying void of their own existence alone. When the empath finally implements no contact, it is the ultimate narcissistic injury, a complete severing of supply that feels like psychological annihilation. This fear and eventual reality of complete abandonment and irrelevance is a constant, agonizing undercurrent throughout the relationship, culminating in a profound and desperate suffering when it finally materializes. The dynamic between an empath and a narcissist is undeniably complex, often leaving the empath profoundly wounded and confused. However, understanding the suffering a narcissist feels when living with an empath is not about pitying the abuser or excusing their behavior. Instead, it is about gaining a deeper, more nuanced psychological understanding of their disorder. This suffering is the narcissist's own internal torment, the constant threat of their emptiness being exposed, the unbearable weight of their unacknowledged shame, the frustration of their incomplete control, the painful mirror of authentic emotion, their inability to completely shatter reality, their unfulfilled craving for perfect supply, their existential loneliness, their rage at unfulfilled entitlement, their pervasive envy, and their ultimate fear of abandonment. These are the agonizing consequences of their own pathology colliding with the reality of genuine human connection and the empath's innate qualities. For you, the empath, recognizing these dynamics can be incredibly liberating. It validates your experiences, confirming that their reactions are not a reflection of your worth, but a manifestation of their deep-seated disorder. It underscores the vital importance of prioritizing your own well-being, setting boundaries, and ultimately choosing your freedom. Your strength and capacity for genuine connection are profound gifts, and understanding how they interact with narcissistic pathology is a crucial step towards reclaiming your authentic self and building a life filled with true, reciprocal love and peace. Thank you for joining us on this vital journey of insight and empowerment. If this video has resonated deeply with you, or if you believe it could bring crucial understanding and a clear path forward to someone you know, please share it widely and with intention. Let's continue to illuminate the path toward healing and authentic connection for everyone. See you in the next video.